Hey guys, it's Matt. Now, I was looking through all my old stuff and I realized I've used more than 3 dozen controllers before. So I figured, why not make a list of the best controllers for video game systems? So, without further ado, here are my top 5 video game controllers of all time. Now, number 5 is the Nintendo GameCube controller. This controller was the first controller that just felt really good in the hands for 3D gaming. The N64 controller had that really weird grip, and it took me forever to figure out really how to hold it until eventually one day I looked inside of a manual and it showed a picture of how to hold it. I'm like, oh, that's how I was supposed to be doing it. But this is the first one where you just naturally had a grip on it right off the bat. You knew exactly how to hold it the second you grabbed it, and it felt really good. I couldn't say the same about the early DualShock and the early PlayStation controller, but this was the first one that just really felt good in the hand. The R and L buttons had those sort of springy type triggers. They're not really triggers, but they are shoulder buttons, but your fingers wrap perfectly around them. They have this Z button here, kind of odd that it was only on one side and there wasn't another one here, but all in all, felt like a great controller. Twin sticks for the first time, Nintendo, and this A button right here, huge. So when you're rapidly mashing and your fingers flying all over the place, you're not missing the button. Really good, really unique design overall. The D-pad, though not used often, felt really good. And the C-stick, even though most people just use it for Smash Bros, the few games that did use it as a twin stick in FPS games, it felt really good in those. Though, like I said, they didn't really use it for most, and then you had the weird one-stick thing, stop to shoot type deal. But overall, I really love this controller. The only thing this controller wasn't good at was playing Super Nintendo games on Virtual Console. But all in all, this controller is absolutely fantastic, and it's a controller that won't die out. I mean, this thing started in 2001, and now the biggest complaint about Wii U was, oh, the GameCube controllers are being phased out. I kind of expected that, and now they're bringing them back again by making an adapter to let you keep using these, and they're just going to keep selling these things forever, it looks like. So, clearly, number 5 on my list goes to the Nintendo GameCube controller. Number 4 on my list is there for similar reasons. The Super Nintendo controller. It was the first controller that really just felt perfect for 2D games, and it established so much for early controllers. It was the first one to have this 4 face button type layout, and think about it, this 4 button face layout has not left controllers ever since then. Unless you're talking Nintendo, in which case they got rid of it and then brought it back later. But PlayStation immediately adopted it, Xbox immediately adopted it, and they have not let go of it. Nintendo brought it back. These 4 face buttons, this was revolutionary. These buttons were concave, these were convex, and you knew what the difference between the buttons was just by feel. You had that subliminal sort of sense, oh, this feels like the top 2 buttons, and this feels like the bottom 2 buttons. They felt different and distinct, so you could subconsciously just knew what you were pressing, even if you weren't that familiar with the controller yet. Fit very well in your hand. L and R just right there, where you don't need to move your fingers. It's right where they're accustomed to be. The D-pad, pretty good also. Overall, this controller is fantastic. Just like the GameCube controller, I bought a USB version of this controller because I just love it so much, and it's basically the perfect 2D. It's basically the perfect controller for 2D games. I can't think of a better one. The NES controller had that sort of blocky, rectangular type layout, and then it was just weird because you could get your fingers stuck on the corners. This just fit perfectly into your hand, whereas that, you're right here, you're hitting a corner. So, number 4 on my list easily goes to the Super Nintendo controller. Number 3 on my list goes to Xbox 360. Now, I haven't had a lot of good things to say about Xbox, but the single best thing about the Xbox 360 to me was this controller. This controller was fantastic, and it did so much. It's very similar in the button layout to the original Xbox controller, but they trimmed a lot of the fat. They made it perfect for the hands, it fits and feels perfect in your hands. Like the Super Nintendo is the perfect controller for 2D games, this felt like the optimal controller for 3D games. It felt like it just fit in your hands perfectly. And not to mention, this controller was basically the controller that's made controllers like a thing for PC gaming. It became the standard controller to have for PC gaming. And for that, it's probably the controller I use the most often on PC nowadays. I even like this more than the Xbox One controller, where the Xbox One controller, it has the similar design, but it felt like my hands feel a little more cramped on it, kind of. I don't have too much experience with the Xbox One controller, but the first time I felt it, I just felt this sort of disappointment overtaking me after coming from this. This controller is great. Obviously, 4 face buttons that we had from the Super Nintendo controller, reverse B and A, reverse X and Y, and you got this. Shoulder buttons, triggers, everything just felt perfect about this controller, and I absolutely loved it. Except for the D-pad. That's its Achilles heel. That's its fatal flaw of the tragic hero. This D-pad, which is just fucking shitty. Other than that, power-wise, used batteries. They had the plug-and-play kits, but those died so quickly, and I've never had a good experience with one. But overall, though, if you had a wired one and you had one on a PC, you were set to go. That's why number 3 on my list is the Xbox 360 controller. Number 2 on my list, the Wii U Pro controller, actually. I find this controller absolutely fantastic. I made a video reviewing this controller last year. I'll annotate it right here. Click the controller and you can see that video. But right here, this controller is basically, you can see it. It looks like an Xbox 360 controller. Like, they almost overlap. They're so similar in shape. They do overlap. They're so similar in shape. But in my opinion, this controller fixes a lot of the things that are wrong with the Xbox 360 controller, and there isn't much wrong with it, so this is just sort of like sanding off the edges, making it perfect. Having 2 sticks on the same axis is optimal in my opinion. I don't know why, but having them off-centered like that is a little weird to me. I mean, yeah, you could get used to it, and it feels fine, but it was always weird to me. Nintendo finally rounded off the edges of their sticks so you don't have that weird diamond thing going on. The triggers you don't push them out partway. The only problem there is that for racing games, you kind of don't have full control of how quick you're going. It's either you're going or you're not. Other than that, though, I love the fact that these are button triggers rather than flex and push down type triggers. Sticks click in. D-pad is fantastic, as most Nintendo D-pads are. The fact that they're sticks same axis, there wasn't much to improve, but they did. And the one thing that was so much better about this controller is right there, you got your mini USB, 80 hours of battery life from this controller. 80. Since I've gotten this thing, I've only needed to charge it once. Which means I've played the Wii U more than I care to admit. I've been playing the Wii U, but I love my Wii U now. It's actually probably my favorite of the next-gen consoles at this point. As sad as it is to say, it's true. I absolutely love it. Now, anyway. Not saying all that much, though. But anyway, number 2 on my list easily goes to this controller. I just wish there was a practical way to use it for PC. And that's its fatal flaw at this point. That's the one thing I wish I could do with this, but you need dongles and drivers, and it's just annoying. Which brings me to number 1, which may surprise you. The DualShock 4, actually. Why? Well, think of the other PlayStation controllers. They weren't great. The DualShock 2 was pretty good. It had those 2 button things on top. DualShock 1 was early. DualShock 3 had those weird, flappy, spongy things as triggers, and nobody even used them for triggers, to the point where every single shooting game used R1. But this controller is probably the perfect PlayStation controller at this point. it has the accelerometers, it has for 6-axis stuff, it has the speaker, it has the extension port, it has a touch pad, which a lot of games just use as a giant start button. Or you can just be like, press options to start. What? So that's just a weird dialogue line. You have the touchpad, which hasn't really been fully utilized yet, but it's weird. You have this responsive like light bar thing where some games have been like, hey, green if you're good on health, red if flashing if you're low on health, and it's kind of that sort of visual aid that really sort of immerses you a little more. It doesn't do much, but it does a lot. The triggers perfectly wrap around your fingers. They feel really good around your fingers to the point where it's just great. Like it's just one of those moments where the second you put this controller in your hands, you're like, ooh. And that's what I love about this controller. The battery is decent on it, but this one uses micro USB to charge instead of mini USB, which I guess is what everyone's moving towards now. I have no comment on the share button because it's a share button. D-pad, as always, feels really good. I don't know, because it has that sort of this thing where it just concaves in, and you can just stick your thumb in there and just mangle it around. It feels really good. Face button's good as always. The sticks are really cool because they come in and then pop out, so you can get this really good grip. It's sort of like a hybrid between concave and convex, and you get this really good grip with these sticks that you would never get otherwise because of this. I love it. Now, some of the early controllers have been experiencing tearing issues. I haven't seemed to get any of those yet. If I did, I just haven't been using the PS4 much because there aren't many games to play on the PS4, which is the sad thing about this controller. But what's cool about this controller is that you can also use it for PlayStation 3 games. It's supported for a lot of PlayStation 3 games now with the new update. You can connect it wirelessly to your PS3 now, and it comes with basic PC drivers. So while all the games it uses X input for games you might not be able to use with this, but any game with configurable controller configuration will pick up on this with all the basic features of it. Basic features. But the fact of the matter is that it's ported on PC out of the box was really cool to me, and I really liked it, and I think all those advantages make it, to me, makes it the best controller of all time as of now. Now, this was a really close, hard list to make. I was constantly going back and forth between these two, but this one just took the cake because this one doesn't have accelerometers or any of that stuff. I mean, it's not like I really need them, or the touchpad or any of that, or the speaker, but the thing is, this has it, which gave it the leg up. Although 80 hours of battery is pretty nice here. Now, it was a really hard list to make, but the list is done. Let me know what you think. You think I snubbed out some controllers? You think I hate on the N64 controller a bit too much for your liking? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you guys think. I've been Matt Goldsman from GamersCast. I'll catch you guys next time.